Hello, I'm Michael Davies again, Spanish inheritance lawyer. Today I'm going to talk about an enormous mistake that we saw last year on a client that came to consult to see if there was any solution to a tremendous problem. And this is basically a case of a will that was done with probably the best of the intentions, but was a terrible will. It only cost the client, when it was signed, €150 plus VAT, and it's ended up costing them €400,000 in extra taxes that were completely unnecessary. Okay, so for the purpose of the example, I'm going to change the names. And we're going to talk about John and Mary. Okay, so John and Mary, this is the story, and at the end I'll explain exactly what the cost was, and you're going to be very surprised about how wrong things can actually go. And it's good to watch this video to avoid it happening to you. Okay, so we're talking about John and Mary. John's 91, Mary's 87. This was just 3 years ago. They go in to see a lawyer because John has a house in Estepona worth about €800,000, and Mary doesn't have any assets in Spain, and John wants to make a will to so that Mary feels Mary is safe, so that if he passes away, she's going to be okay. Okay, so this is John's second marriage. Mary doesn't have any children at all, and John has one son who lives in London. So we've got John, we've got Mary, and John's son. So John goes in to see a lawyer to prepare his will. I can imagine that the lawyer probably handled many different types of work, probably litigation, divorce, and he probably had all these cases going on his table. So John and Mary go in and they want to make a quick will. John doesn't see any difficulty, and the lawyer doesn't either. So John says he wants to make a will, leaving all his assets in Spain to Mary, and that basically his end beneficiary is going to be his son. So the lawyer says, well, the thing is, what are you going to do? Are you going to, leave it? If you leave it all to Mary, then you need to trust Mary to later on do the right thing and leave the assets to your son. John's not worried about that because Mary is very honourable, and he doesn't see a lot of risk of her remarrying and having other children now, so he's okay with that. So they make a quick will. It costs them €150 plus VAT, plus about €50–60 for the notary to witness it. The nasty will is here. I have it still in my office. Okay, so what they did with that will is John left everything to Mary, and he also said that if something happened to both of them simultaneously in a car accident or something, then everything would go down to his son. Okay, but what happened is a year ago, John passes away and Mary inherits. No problem at all. The will is taken to probate. Very straightforward. Mary inherits. She pays no inheritance tax because she's got an entitlement of €1 million. She falls below because the property was about €800,000. Up to there, no problem. Now, Mary, as she promised she would, as soon as she inherits, with the lawyer that handled probate, which wasn't us either, but that part of the work was done correctly. She inherits, gets tax clearance, the property is safely put in her name, and now she makes a new will, leaving everything down to John's son back in London. Okay, just a few months later, she passes away. And now the beneficiary is her son. And this is where all hell breaks loose, because suddenly the son realizes on consulting with a lawyer that his tax is going to be about €400,000 on a house that's only worth $800,000. Now, how on earth can it be 400,000? Very simple. He is not inheriting from his father. He's inheriting from his father's wife, and with the connection broken because his father has already passed away. So the taxman considers him a group 4. Okay, now group 1 and group 2, that is spouse and descendants, have the fantastic deal in Enzo Fiat. It's €1 million tax-free. And even after that, you get 99% deduction. So if you inherit from your father, from your spouse, you pay no tax or a very small, almost symbolical amount. So he now is in this group 4. Now, let me explain how we come to the 400,000. And for that, I'm going to share my screen with you and just show you how this actually works. Okay, so when you calculate the tax in Spain, it's a 3-step procedure. First, we work out what the exempt amounts are, which in the case of a group 4, there's no exempt amount. So we go on to the second step, which we apply the sliding scale, which you can see my little arrow here. I'm moving around. So we go to the sliding scale, €800,000, go to the bottom of the sliding scale, on 797,000, tax bill will be 199. So we're basically talking about €200,000. And then you have to apply a multiplier at the end, depending on what group you're in. Group 1 and 2, those are the good groups. The multiplier is 1, that's spouse and descendants. Group 3, this here we've got cousins, brothers and sisters, and descendants by affinity. I'll explain something about this in a second. And the group 4, which is where we are here. So we go 200,000 multiplied by the 2. We've got a tax bill of €400,000. Okay, it could actually be a bit more than that if his depending on his pre-existing wealth. But let's not make it even worse for him today. And let's just say it's the multiplier of 2. That's how we come to the €400,000. Now, one could argue that he's a descendant by affinity. Some lawyers will look at this and say, oh, well, maybe he's a descendant by affinity. Well, descendant by affinity theoretically would require him to inherit from his father's wife while the father was still alive, which is not the case. Okay, that would purely be a descendant by affinity. It is true that court cases against the government have taken place regarding this, and sometimes when you can prove that you're inheriting from someone that did look after you when you were a small kid, in other words, your parent remarried while you were still a kid, and therefore there's a connection, a strong connection, only then will they sometimes the tax office consider you a descendant by affinity. But even as a descendant by affinity, this is nothing like being a descendant from your parent. I mean, descendant by affinity in group 3 would be that the exempt amount would have been €10,000, almost nothing, and then the multiplier at the end would have been 1.5. So we'd still have been talking about an inheritance tax of about €340,000, even if we'd be considered a descendant by affinity. So at the end of the day, we're talking about a bill of between 340,000 and €400,000, the most likely scenario in this case, for him to inherit this property that in reality belonged to his father just four years ago. And because of a badly written will, he's ended up paying this €400,000. What should have happened? Well, without doubt, when Mary and John went to see the lawyer, taking into account that they were already 91 and 87, they should have, the lawyer should have explained how bad the inheritance tax could end up being for John's son, especially with those ages, that it's very likely that he's going to end up inheriting quite soon. It's just an absolutely crazy situation in which we're giving away money to the tax office. All he needed to do, John could have made a will, leaving his Spanish assets directly down to his son. Sorry, I'm going to stop sharing. He should have left a will, leaving everything directly down to his son, but left to protect Mary. He could have just left her a life possession of those assets. So that would have meant that when he passed away, the son inherited directly. Mary was protected by a life possession. And she actually gets a title deed to say that she can use the assets until she dies. And on her on that first step, there'd be no inheritance tax like it was in the other case. And on the second death, the son's already the owner of the property, and he just has to consolidate the life possession. Because of Mary's age, she was 87, the life possession has a residual value of 10%. So he would only have had to inherit 10%, 80,000 euro in value, on which he would have paid a very small amount of tax and not this horrendous amount. Okay, so I hope you found this email useful. And if you thought it was a good video and you'd like to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching.